You have to learn yourself to make decisions. The processor of everything that's happening in this business is uniquely yours. And so people are always going to give you advice. And is one of the problems with venture capital is that you have a lot of people that think because they give a company money that they get to take the steering wheel on occasion. There's a lot of founders that want to go as far as they can without taking venture money, because that is oftentimes the case. We try not to be that venture fund. You want to have a broad community of people that are willing and want you to be successful, but are willing to share their insights. But you ultimately have to be the arbiter. You have to decide for yourself, and be very careful about people that are pressing you with specifics to do something.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Leadership Exchange podcast. My name is Tracy. You can find me on LinkedIn at Tracy S. Lee. And I'm so excited to be here today with Vaughn Wright, who is also local to me. We're both here in Atlanta. Hello, Vaughn. Welcome.
Thank you, Tracy. Happy to be here. Happy to be with a fellow creator.
Yes, I love it. Yes, me and Vaughn have been bonding over creating things and building things and, all the other great things. And you do so much with your life, Vaughn. I feel like I've talked to you on so many different levels. But if you're in Atlanta or even not in Atlanta, you should definitely hit up Vaughn for the sort of like plethora of things you do. Do you want to give us an overview, by the way?
Sure. I'm one of these people that was fortunate enough to survive the first half of my life. Mm-hmm. With enough resources to wake up in my second half of life and be able to do the things that excite me. Spend my life doing what I feel called to do. So some of the things that I do, I am CEO, founder of Lifters of Men. It's a group of men started in a CrossFit gym, really to just provide support for men as they go through different phases of their lives. Today, it can be kind of challenging to be a man because, we've fallen out of vogue, if you haven't heard. Supporting men and supporting their families. We do lots of service projects. My back is aching from one we did on Saturday. But I'm also, I run a second half coaching business. So I help people in midlife to navigate the challenge of moving from a career that might have been all-encompassing, and then discovering greater meaning for the second half of their life. So to help them navigate through that. And then I'm a partner at Zane Venture Fund. So I think we're probably going to spend a decent amount of time talking about that aspect. And then finally, what we were just talking about is I flip houses. I have a good friend who's also one of my partners at Lifters of Men. And we started flipping houses back in 2019 because we wanted to give people with families the ability to find homes they could afford and that lived the way that they and their families wanted to live. So we typically are finding dilapidated homes and we're remodeling them very efficiently and then making available, we don't sell them to investors, we sell them to families.
I love that. Again, it's so many things, and you're so blessed to be able to do so many things. I think, which, by the way, you said second half of your life. So where is that cutoff point?
Yeah, the second half of your life is, I think it's more of an inner state, where you typically find yourself feeling like the wind that was in your sails to do the work that you've been doing has disappeared. And you feel this internal calling to become something more, to become something different. It's usually a crisis of identity where you used to be proud of the identity that you had, that you fashioned for yourself, but now you're feeling like it's not what you're called to do, and you sort of want to dispense with it, but you don't know what to do. You don't know where to go and how to get there, and you don't understand that at age 50 or 55, and it can happen earlier. I've coached people that are kind of 40 that have already hit this. Mm-hmm. But if you've been successful, you think that you should be on top of the world. Yeah. Like I should have this all figured out and I'm just going to be soaring. And then you realize that all the things that I'd been chasing aren't getting it for me. there's an emptiness, and you're wanting to find fullness. So second half of life it's a journey, but it's the one that calls us to the reason why we were put here in the first place.
I mean, when I hear you talking about that, I definitely feel like even folks who are 21, 22 sort of feel that way, especially with this new generation. Do you feel that too? Because everything you're saying, I feel like a lot of sort of like 20, under 25 feel, but maybe they're just not there yet.
No, I do, and I think it's because the baby boomer generation, you know, our kids got to see, they were watching this movie, right, as it was playing out, with us, and I think they saw the emptiness in so many of the things that we were chasing.
That's so interesting. So they're experiencing the midlife crisis with their parents, basically.
Yeah, and they didn't have the. I think we did a disservice for our young people in that we sort of abandoned these solid foundations. These old frumpy sort of cultural things that gave us identity, rooted in something of a higher order, something that was bigger than ourselves, and we sort of had this bit of a laissez-faire sort of attitude about. Hey, don't restrict your kids too much. Don't put too many constraints. Don't demand, as though that was somehow helping them. But in fact, it hurt them. That having those demands, when you're young, and having rules that you need to follow and kind of push up against and try to understand, those things ground you. And they allow you to focus on certain things, which could just be, I'm trying to circumvent these rules. But I had some waypoints. And I think the kids that are lost in their 20s, we haven't given them the waypoints.
Because they've been allowed to be free, and now they are free, and they're just, again, not sort of grounded. It's interesting because, I mean, I have very little kids, and I love being on Instagram. My friends are like, get off Instagram. It's not healthy. Like yesterday, it was telling me that carrots were bad for me, and then it was a myth, so you always have to look up if it's a myth or not. But there was something that said that kids who have chores when they're young do significantly better in life than kids who don't. So I thought that was an interesting point. But anyways, I love your story. And, as you can all see, it's really fun to talk to Vaughn. Vaughn, you said something to me one day, and you said, you're interested in creating the future, not stewarding the present. And I really love that sort of like as a motto. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I guess I would start by saying, that annoying kid that always asks why, why this, why that? That was me. I was the annoying kid that I needed to understand the world myself. I had to find a way of anchoring myself in the world, and I realized I was always future casting. My ability to understand something in the present that seemed mundane gave me a foundation for me to future cast, to imagine what could be, and that got me in a lot of trouble because the teacher would say something, and I would finish her sentence with something that she wouldn't have said, but that was creative and interesting. At least I thought it was creative and interesting. And usually would get lots of laughs, and I would take a trip to the principal's office. And I realized probably through the first 30 years of my life that it's expected that we be rule followers and that we be quiet, keep our mouths shut, listen, learn, regurgitate things, and we weren't supposed to be creating all along the way, but that was always my inclination. So by the time I, let's say, finally got to a place where I had some latitude, I found the greatest joy in being able to care enough about a problem or an opportunity to just completely invest myself creatively to come up with a better way of solving the problem or a different path to get to the outcome that I thought so often people had lost the vision of the outcome, the why we're doing this in the first place. And being asked to steward the present seemed like I was abdicating the gifts that were given to me to be one of those few people that was imagining a future that was better for people than the one we have. And so why would I spend my time, turning the crank of, the way things work today, following an existing process when I thought the process could be way better, or I thought this is not the way to get this done. So technology turned out to be a great partner for me that I hadn't expected to be a technology guy. I went to business school to go work for Procter & Gamble. I had my double-breasted pinstripe suit and my wingtips and all that, and I was going to go, I guess, schlep soap or cereal or something, but technology had just shown up. And I realized that technology was the great tool to bypass how things work. We could invent a future because technology allowed us to do things that we could never do before. And so I've had the good fortune of having jumped onto that back in, the late 80s. And it's been my whole career. It's changed the art of the possible for me. And, I've found that I need the people that steward the present because there's so much that needs to keep operating that supports people, supports,
Yes.
humanity, and allows people like me to be able to go, play in the clouds.
Yes.
So,
Yes. I totally feel that way. I mean, being in technology as well, I feel like our team sometimes, especially with this AI world, a lot of people are talking about AI and using AI sort of in this, one good example is a lot of people are saying, no, AI, with AI, it's fine to use it as long as a human is always in the loop reviewing the code. But like nobody's thinking about, hey, what does it mean when there's, if you're getting AI agents to review, like to write code, sorry, there is no human that can keep up with the amount of code that an AI can write. So what's the future? But again, everybody's sort of stuck in the present right now of like, well, how do I utilize this now? And we're thinking about the future, but then, it's always sort of like a balance, right, of where you live. And I actually love what you're saying about sort of like helping build for the future, if you will, because you are a partner, like you said, at Zane, and I think choosing venture capital is actually an interesting vehicle for impact. Tell us a little bit about sort of like why you did that, and sort of like how sort of being a partner in a venture fund is sort of like following your vision.
yeah, I guess the venture fund kind of chose me. That I was at a point in my life where I was looking for ways that I could share my gifts with optimistic people.
Mm-hmm.
And the startup community, almost by definition, is full of optimists, people that believe they can change the world for the better. And so I was contacted to provide some feedback on a concept for a new venture fund. And I disagreed very much with the general partner on some things, and I thought that would be the end of it. And she called me back and she said, "You're exactly the kind of person I want to have working with me, who's not going to just agree with what I have to say."
I love that. That's
Yes,
amazing.
yeah. So it's turned out to be so much fun in that I've learned a lot, but the really the fun part is again working with startup founders. That I say my personal mission is to help purpose-driven leaders make their difference in the world.
Yes. Yes.
So it's a perfect match for that. So almost by definition, if you're going to be a founder that has any chance of succeeding, you're going to be purpose-driven. There's something bigger that you're trying to accomplish, and my ability to help you as a founder navigate. I'm decades ahead of you on the path towards the end. So if there's anything that I have that I can help you to see. And to guide you to trust yourself. There are a lot of things that I do to try to build the founder up in their confidence. But it's just a great it's a great pairing of my background and my inclinations, and it allows me to still create, but I create as a guide as opposed to the person who's actually, playing the music or writing the score.
I love that.
Yeah, it's like it's like being a coach and knowing that you didn't run the play, but you helped create the environment where that play could be successful.
We'll be back to the episode in a second, but first, I'd like to acknowledge the team behind the channel, This.Labs. We're seeing 3x to 5x productivity improvements with our teams and clients using tools like Cursor, Claude Code, and GitHub Copilot. We help teams adopt these technologies and get max value out of them through strategic partnerships, trainings, and other software engineering services. Check us out at ai.this.co. Thanks, now back to the video.
And Zane's thesis is the healthy human economy. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means?
Yeah, this is our second fund. So when back in, I want to say 23, as we were thinking about what we were going to do next after the first fund, we talked about what we think the biggest opportunities are, what's breaking or has yet to break that is due to break. And I have had my own personal journey in the health space, and I had been studying in this area, and I told our general partner, I said, we need to invest in health, because the decline of the health of the U.S. and really globally, but we are the standouts in terms of how far we've declined, is the single biggest threat to our economy and to our democracy. So a healthy human economy is, let's create a healthier economy by starting with healthier humans. Right? So we want to invest to create the future of health, because the current system we have that's supposed to be stewarding or creating health is doing an abysmal job. No offense to people in healthcare, because I think it's the system, not the people, that's the problem. We have a system that profits off of the sickness of our people. And for anybody listening there, if you've been in a big corporate environment, you understand how easy it is to get lost in the quarterly profitability objectives, as though that is the end all be all of why you exist. And if we're talking about something that seems to be mundane, that isn't really germane to our human existence, okay, maybe it's not such a big deal. But when we're talking about literally the capacity of our humanity, we can't continue to invest $5 trillion to produce an ever declining state of health. And our young people, if you want to look at how horrible the stats are for the adult population, it's even more frightening if you look at our youth. And the youth used to be, we just took for granted that you're going to be healthy, right? You're going to be healthy until you're 35 or 40 or whatever, and then suddenly the wheels start to fall off or wobble a little bit. Well, we have below the age of 18, over 40% of our children are suffering from one or more chronic diseases. 40%, and by the time you get 18 to 35, it's 55%. 35? Are you kidding me? 35, wow. You were still, no offense to anybody, you're still out, having a few too many beers the night before, and then you're going for a 10K run, right? I mean, we're talking about the advancing, the age advancement of 20 plus years since the 70s. That is how far our health has declined. And the cost that we are bearing, you could say, okay, we're spending all this money in healthcare, but what we're doing is we're spending money that should have been spent to give people higher wages, right? To invest in things that would have created new opportunities, to educate workforce, to invest in economic development. $5 trillion goes a really long way, and we've got to do something about it.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say all this, because I recently, last Friday, I hosted a lunch with a bunch of women leaders in the healthcare and life sciences space. And one of the conversations that popped up was this whole idea of being more healthy, right? And the system sort of incentivizes you, of course, to be more healthy. But the problem is, the healthy people who take advantage of, that sort of whatever percentage savings that you get on your insurance if you work out or do this or do that, you're not addressing the greater population, and people who are unhealthy are not going to take advantage of that savings. So even from an employer perspective of trying to save money and things like that, and again, how the sort of system and sense right now is broken. So, I mean, I love that Zane is sort of like focused on that and focusing on sort of building impact. So you said you work with a lot of the founders at Zane, and, you know, you've seen so many people come through, I'm sure. What are sort of the red flags or standout traits that guide your decision to actually back somebody at Zane?
Yeah. Well, I think every VC has got, you know, some of the standard things that you're looking at, you know, size of the market, you know, some discernment around, you know, the product, the complexity, compliance, regulatory headwinds, anything that creates a structural opportunity or impediment. But in terms of really looking at the founders and the attributes of the founders, is that the number one turnoff for me is if the reason why the founder has created the company is particularly shallow. If it's about money, if it's about fame, it's about wanting to have a particular identity. If you feel that that's really the motivation, then that founder is not going to go anywhere, and it's not a good investment to make. You know, I typically am looking for someone who has a compulsion to do what it is they're doing. It's they feel like they don't know what they would do if they didn't do this. You know, I want to find that it's rooted in something that gives them unique insight into a problem space that others don't have. You know, having walked a path that is unique and is telling of a path that we're likely to be walking in the future. And if they already know what motivates one down that path, and they know what it feels like, and they know what needs to be fixed for it to be right, those are the kinds of things I'm looking for. You know, and somebody who's got a degree of humility, which, you know, it's hard sometimes to discern, because you want a founder to be bold to some degree, because they're going to have to be able to, you know, they're going to have to be able to run across the enemy lines while the bullets are flying, right? So they've got to have a certain amount of fearlessness and a certain boldness, but that is different from being arrogant, right? The humility is not thinking less of yourself; it's thinking about yourself less often, right? So I want to hear that they are, you know, eager and open to learn, that they've got a degree of curiosity that really is going to power what it is they're doing, and they're prepared for the resilience that's going to be required in the work that they do. Because startup, I mean, you know, a startup is a scarcity environment. You never have all that you need. And you've got to make really good choices about the little bit of money that you have, the resources you have. Where do I deploy them?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, humility is an interesting, because I've been in startup before, and, you know, I look at some of my friends who are running companies that have billion-dollar valuations, and I'm like, my God, I don't have that, like that balls to the wall sort of attitude I feel like you need to have to sort of get there, right? That's just not my style, right? Like, but I really admire what they do. And when you say humility, I also kind of think coachability.
Yes.
You know, founders need to be coachable. Do you think that is sort of the same as, you know, humility, or is it a little bit different?
They go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
I think the coachability adds I'm receptive to other input. But I always tell founders, you know, if they join the portfolio, I always tell them, seek input, but be careful about advice. Right? Is that you have to learn yourself to make decisions, because the processor of everything that's happening in this business is uniquely yours. And so people are always going to give you advice. And is one of the problems with venture capital is that, you have a lot of people that think because they give a company money that they get to take the steering wheel on occasion. And that's, I think that's, there's a lot of founders that want to go as far as they can without taking venture money, because that is oftentimes the case. We try not to be that venture fund. But you want to have a broad community of people where, that are willing and want you to be successful, but are willing to share their insights. But you ultimately have to be the arbiter. You have to decide for yourself, and be very careful about people that are pressing you with specifics to do something. Even if they say, if I were you, I'd probably do this.
And advice is always just advice, right? It doesn't, I think some people also forget that you don't actually have to take advice if you don't want to. I remember one of my investors, who, I love all my investors, but one of my investors had a lot of opinions, and we were trying to just, after the fundraise, we were just trying to just figure it out. And one of my other investors said, as he saw me struggling through this, because they wanted a lot of reports, a lot of reports, a lot of updates. And he said, you don't actually have, they don't have a board seat. So I think my advice is don't give up a board seat if you don't have to, first off. And then second off, just like you said, advice is just advice. Make sure to take those inputs and actually distill them down into something that is actionable for you. Or sometimes, not all advice is good advice either. I love that. So again, you do so much, and I encourage everybody, Vaughn, it's really fun to talk to you. So you've said before as well to me, the more successful you are, the more stuck you become. Can you share a story of how somebody has maybe shattered that trap, or how they've broken through? How do you get past being stuck when you feel that way?
Yeah. Well, because the people I coach, I keep their stories very confidential, so I don't want to share one of those, but I'll share my own, because my situation is what precipitated me to start the coaching business. Is that I had a lot of career success. I worked my way into just about everything that I wanted to do. I managed to have tons of freedom. I was a part of some really amazing things in my career. And I got to a point where I was really just internally miserable. I was no longer proud of what it was that I was about. I was seeing more the truth of the motivations and the environment that I was in. And I probably would have stayed stuck there for a while. And people are not going to be happy to hear that this is the surest way to get you unstuck. But my wife was diagnosed with cancer. And one of my children turned out to be addicted to opioids. And so whatever perfect life I thought I had constructed, whatever control I thought I had imposed on the world, I felt like everything was falling apart. And I realized I was putting my energy into empty things when much more important things needed my attention. And so I sort of blew up my career about that time, because I called it fighting against the net. So I felt trapped in a net, and I couldn't bear to follow the rules any longer within the work environment that I was in, and to do the things I didn't think were the right things. I felt like there was a lot of evil being asked of me to get along with the rest of the rest of the executives, and so I ended up exiting this company, and it probably took me 10 years to completely sort out what it was I was seeking, and what it is I was really looking for. But here it is. Here's what I'm doing now. Everything I do is very purposeful. I I penned back in 2012 when I got spit out of the beast. I penned what it is I wanted. I wanted to live a purposeful life, and I wanted to free myself of the temptations that would draw me back to those things that weren't healthy. And I wanted to answer the call. I wanted to hear the call of my maker and to answer the call and to be open to answer it in whatever way I was being called, which is why I have such an, kind of diverse collection of things that I'm doing. And all along the way, I've done, 10 different things, started my own, my own healthcare business. I've worked for a PE firm to help solve some problems that employees were having, not to help the PE firm. That probably wasn't the right thing, but it helped the people. Started this not-for-profit. So I'm, but it took, like I said, it took me almost 10 years before I worked myself through the process, and I kept going back to the old me because that's what I knew. And I was rewarded for being the old me. I made a lot of money. People patted me on the back and thought I was great. I had my own parking spot. I had a nice this and a nice that. All those things that turned out to not really be very important. So it took a long time to see all of those things as obstacles, and to finally get on this path. And which is why I started the second half coaching. Is I don't want everybody to have to take 10 years. I don't want them to have to grope around in the dark. And I don't want them to blow up their lives. People that end up getting divorced because they can't let go of, an old life that doesn't exist anymore. So I'm the story.
It really is a journey. I feel like life is such a journey. And you really have to have a lot of introspection, right, to sort of do that. And it is hard to break out of those patterns. But I think all of us sort of stand typically at sort of some crossroad in their life, So for listeners who are listening, who are standing at sort of those pivotal crossroads, whether it's launching a startup or whether it's reimagining their life, what's the single question you would say they need to be asking themselves right now?
Why am I here? Like why, if you believe that each of our lives is a divine gift, we have to ask ourselves, why are we here, and what is life asking of me? Because most people, when you're young, you're asking of life. But as you get older, you realize there must have been a reason I was put here. I have a unique set of gifts. What is life asking of me? Why am I here? What is the unique gift that I have to give? And to be willing to have faith to follow the pursuit of what it is we're called to do. And that is very uncomfortable for people because we are a control society. We have to have the detailed plan. We have the calendar of everything we're going to do, like every hour of every day. Our vacation is all planned out in great detail. Oh my gosh, there's so much we're missing because we're so focused on executing this plan, and we don't hear the call. I like to tell my coachees is that we're born with a signal. I believe it's our souls connecting to our Creator. We're born with a signal that we connect with, but over the first half of our life, we accumulate so much noise. So it drowns out the signal, and we start chasing noise as though it's the signal. And that in that transition in the second half of life, I think the soul re-enters the sound of our life, and we start hearing it more. But we have to declutter our lives before we can really dial in on the signal. And then once we feel like we're dialed in on it, we get that wind in our sails, and we start following it, and we start letting go of things. Life becomes lighter. There's more joy. We find that there's so many ways that we can serve and give back. Ask yourself, what is life asking of you?
Well, Vaughn, it was so amazing chatting with you. Again, I just feel like you have such a wealth of knowledge. Where can we find you online?
I am not a social media person.
Okay.
I won't give my reasons why, but anybody can reach me at Vaughn at Zane.vc.
Perfect.
They can find me on LinkedIn, so that's really the only social media that I'm on.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah,
awesome.
and I'm always, and I'll just say I'm always happy to meet new, interesting people. I care to hear people's stories, so I'm always happy to meet somebody new and add you to my network. And if there's something I can do for you, I'd be happy to do that.
Well, amazing. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and definitely check out Vaughn on the internet. Check out Zane. They're doing some really cool stuff. If you're a founder who is also looking for funding, maybe Vaughn is a good person to reach out to as well. And other than that, we'll see you next time.
My pleasure. Thanks, Tracy.